Hello. What's going on, everybody? Welcome back to the LTL podcast. It's Wednesday evening or Wednesday night, depending where you are. It is October 4th, 2023. And my friends, I'm telling you, this year feels like it is flying by. We're getting there. We're getting through October. And my favorite time of the year is happening pretty soon because I love Halloween. I absolutely love Halloween and I can't wait. And I'm sure that you all love Halloween as well, too. So checking in with everybody here in the chat. Hope everybody had an amazing day. I just got in from work about a half an hour ago. Things are going very well. Happy in my new position and at my new job so far. My boss is really cool. And, just have to see how things work out the next couple of weeks. But I think that everything is going to be fine. I think everything's going to be fine. Let me just check in here with the chat with everybody. We got Mind Your Business in the room. Bella's in the room. Heatherlicious is going to be back. Rogue is here. Brenda in the chat. Gee, I want the Bella says, sounds good. I'm baking fresh pumpkin bread at the moment. Smells like holiday in my kitchen. I need to find me a nice wife that would cook me pumpkin bread. That would be great. Let's see. Frasia's here. Mary's here. Lily Black is here. Hello. SJ Howard is here. Checking in. Let's see who else we got. Teresa's in the house. OCD is here. Yeah, it's going pretty good. It's not too bad. I can't complain. A lot more running around than I thought I was going to be doing. So got to build up the leg stamina again. Lucky Phil is in the room. All right, let's get to this. Bella, help Brian out. Yeah, I need to find me a nice wife that'll cook me bread. That'd be nice. Did I see that there were police officers shot in Philadelphia? I did not. I did not see that. I was working all day and I had this show planned. I was going to make an awful joke, but it's not the time to joke around. 3 officers shot, suspect dead after incident in Northeast Philadelphia. Wow. Crazy. Well, hopefully those officers make a recovery. I don't know too much about the story, but hopefully they make a recovery. Okay, let's get into the show for tonight. So I want to talk a little bit about Stephen Smith. There's been some new information that has come forward in his death. I mean, back in 2015, an unsolved death or homicide, whatever you want to believe. I know there's a lot of floating information out there. The Murdaugh family has been implicated in this. So I wanted to bring this up first because I thought this was very interesting. Tsunami's here as well, too. What's up, man? So let's pull this up. This was back in August, and I found this article from Fitz News, independent and unapologetic. I love that. That's great. Great article here. So Stephen Smith case, person of interest behind bars, and then very small unrelated charge. But we'll read through a little bit of this. So one of the two persons of interest in connection with the still unsolved 2015 murder of Stephen Smith in Hampton County, South Carolina, is behind bars in Palomino State, Lower County. 26-year-old Patrick Austin Wilson of Brunson, South Carolina, was taken into custody in Greensville County on Friday, August 25th, 2023, where he had been held for 4 days prior to a bench trial being held on Tuesday, August 29th in Varnville, South Carolina. The case has nothing to do with Smith's death, though, or the framed murder of the family, of the Murdaugh family, which has been so often linked to it. Wilson was charged in late December of 22 with transporting alcohol in a motor vehicle with a broken seal. Hampton County Magistrate Gwendolyn Bampfield found him guilty of this charge and issued a committed order, though at this point the details of the sentencing is unknown. Excuse me. The South Carolina State Law Enforcement Division, SLED, the agency investigating Smith's murder, was not immediately available to comment on Wilson's conviction on the alcohol charge. Wilson was first named along with Sean Conley, also of Brunson, South Carolina, in South Carolina Highway Patrol Multidisciplinary Action Investigation Team, or report on Smith's death. Our media outlet exclusively published that document back in March. Shortly thereafter, we reported that Wilson and Conley shared status of persons of interest in connection with the Smith case. Smith's body was discovered by a passing motorist, a tow truck driver, at approximately 4 a.m. on July 8, 2015, in the middle of Sandy Run Road near Crockettsville, South Carolina. Initially deemed gunshot wound and then later a vehicle hit and run, the subsequent investigation failed to come to a specific conclusion, fueling a barrage of wild tales. Among them were the widespread speculation that the death was somehow linked to the Murdaughs. The investigation stalled for years over inconsistencies as to whether Smith was killed by a hit and run or more than a nefarious means. One theory suggests he was struck with a baseball bat from the back of a moving truck. Smith's case has attracted international attention after it was predominantly featured in the hit Netflix series The Murdaugh Murders: A Southern Scandal. What was the Murdaugh family connection to Smith's death? It is not immediately clear. According to the 26-year-old Buster Murdaugh, who has been accused by many on social media of being involved in the crime, there is no connection. Now, we know Buster Murdaugh broke his silence about a month ago. We're going to play that video, just some clips from it, after being possibly implicated in Smith's death. There were rumors that they were in a relationship together, and Murdaugh and Smith were classmates at Wade Hampton High School and played on the same baseball team. Still, the Murdaugh name peppered the Matz report. For example, on December 18, 2015, 5 months after Smith's death, SCHP investigators received a tip from Wilson's self-described stepfather, Darren Wilson, of Varnsville, South Carolina. According to Williams, Wilson informed him that Conley was driving a vehicle which struck and killed Stephen Smith, who told him to share the information Randy Murdaugh, the older brother of convicted killer Alec Murdaugh. According to the case notes contained in the Matz report, William stated that the reason he was passing this information on was because Randy Murdaugh told him to call. Both Wilson and Conley lived in the same area near Stephen's body was found, and we noted back in March that information obtained by SLED investigators was reportedly drawn a sharper focus on the potential suspects. As this is writing, though, none of that information has been disclosed. There's been a renewed effort to solve Stephen Smith's case following the murder conviction of the Alec Murdaugh in March. To the end, Smith's body was exhumed in April. The second autopsy was performed on it in the search of the evidence. Attorney Eric Bland, who represents Stephen Smith's mother, let it be known back in June that a statewide grand jury was considering evidence in this case. Bland predicted there were more answers to some long-standing questions about Smith's death before Labor Day. This news outlet has independently confirmed that the existence of a grand jury investigation into Smith's death, although we have no information on the investigation timetable. As we are founding editor Will Fawkes has often noted, the crime scene on Sandy Run Road is a study in contradictions. The location of Smith's body in the middle of the road was totally inconsistent with a vehicle strike, but the massive blood loss observed on the asphalt seemed inconsistent with him being murdered at that location, folks noted in a recent report. According to our sources, a statewide grand jury was heard critical evidence related to Smith's case, including evidence which consistently proves Smith was killed at a site where his body was found. Wow. Forensic expert Kenneth Kinsey has confirmed that the assessment based on the review of the graphic crime scene photos of Smith's murder. Kinsey was hired to review the evidence in this case as part of an independent investigation launched by the Bland law firm. The Smith case has been quiet for weeks. In July, we reported on a TikTok video which claimed Wilson was on the run and his roommate was dead of an overdose. Following information indicated that the grand jury was looking to question him about Smith's homicide. However, the clip was removed from the platform after receiving perhaps more interest than originally intended. The TikToker said Wilson and his roommate had been working at Jeff Lynch Appliances in Greensville, South Carolina. Absent any official word from authorities, that information was largely treated as unfounded gossip. The outcome of the grand jury investigation into Smith's homicide has yet to be made public. Meanwhile, Wilson has been charged with larceny over a theft of tools and rifles from Barnesville home on July 16, 2022. His trial on that charge is pending. And then it's just basically stay tuned to this media outlet for the latest developments on unsolved murder mystery. Interesting. Great little article. Lots of information to digest there. Probably some things that we haven't heard yet. But we're going to get into Murdaugh, Buster speaking out. So let's play that first, and then we'll get into some of the new information that's out there. All right, let's hear from Vinny. Court TV. Court TV. If I can find the video. Here we go. Vinny, what do we got?
I'm Vinny Politan. Great to have you with us here on Closing Arguments. Get ready. This is some hour we've got, and we're going to start this hour. We're going to take you back to the low.
Remember, this is about a month ago. So a little review, and then we'll take you right up to present day.
Country. We're going to stay in the low country for a while here. First thing we need to talk about, Buster Murdaugh. Which Murdaugh was that? We'll take a look. You remember him from the trial. This is the only member of that family who was not murdered by his father, Alec, the surviving son. He was at the courthouse every day. I saw him. I sat one row behind him inside that courtroom. He was there. It was difficult to read him, what he thought about everything that was going on. Take a look, some hugs. It was tough. And you wonder.
Hello, everybody.
He lost his
Welcome
brother.
in.
He lost his mother. His father's accused of doing it all. At points, he was biting his fingernail. Some people think he was doing something else there. I'm not sure about that, but that was during some touchy testimony against the family. But again, he sat there and was difficult to understand exactly what was going on in his head. But there was a moment during this trial when we did hear from Buster Murdaugh. You may recall, and he got emotional as well. It's not easy. Your mom's dead. Your brother's dead. And now you've got to raise your right hand at your father's double murder trial, the man who destroyed your family, and get up on the stand and testify. Let's take another listen to the testimony of Buster Murdaugh.
When did you first find out that your mom and brother were murdered?
My dad called me. I can't remember the exact time, but it was later. And he called me on the phone. He asked me if I was sitting down, and I was like, yeah. And then he, sounded odd, and then he told me that my mom and brother had been shot.
What'd you do?
Well, Brooklyn, my girlfriend, was with me, and I think she heard the, she could hear my conversation kind of over the phone. And so she just started packing stuff, and I kind of just sat there for a minute, and I was in shock.
And when you got there, did you see your dad?
Yes, sir.
What kind of condition was he in? What was his demeanor?
Yeah, his demeanor was, I mean, he was destroyed. He was heartbroken. I walked in the door and saw him, and gave him a hug, and just broken down.
Could he speak?
Not really.
Was he crying?
Yes, sir.
Were you aware that your dad had a opioid addiction?
A little bit. I knew a little bit about the usage of pills.
What did you know about it?
I knew that either my brother and mom had found them at some point, and then, you know, told them like, hey, we found these. And I want to say the 2018 around Christmas, he went to a detox facility after Christmas.
I'm undecided. I don't know.
That was my knowledge of it. Thought that handled it. And then there were a couple more times after the fact where they would kind of go into this finding pills, all that stuff. And then he did a few kind of like at home, just self-detoxed a couple times. And, you know, thought, you know, once he did that, you know, get off of them. But that was kind of my general knowledge about it all. We had a lot of guns.
Do you have shotguns?
We did. Shotguns.
Do you have 12 gauge shotguns?
12 gauge shotguns, 20 gauge shotguns, 16 gauge shotguns, 28 gauge shotguns.
Right. And how many type rifles did you have on the property?
A lot.
Okay, so why are we talking about Buster Murdaugh tonight? Well, Buster Murdaugh sat down with Martha McCallum of Fox News to break his silence for the first time since the trial. Let's watch a bit of that interview right now.
12 jurors all agreed that your dad killed your mom and Paul.
That's right.
What do you think about that?
I do not believe it was fair.
Why?
I was there for 6 weeks studying it, and I think it was a tilted table from the beginning. And I think, unfortunately, a lot of the jurors felt that way prior to when they had to deliberate. It was predetermined in their minds prior to when they ever heard any shred of evidence.
Well, you do have a thing called voir dire or voir dire, where you can question the prospective witnesses and make sure that they're fair and impartial. And by the way, Alec Murdaugh wanted the trial in that courthouse because that was his home court advantage. That's where he won all those millions of dollars down there in the low country. But it turned out the way it did. But now, I am not necessarily shocked that Buster Murdaugh doesn't think necessarily, I'm not sure if he necessarily thinks his father is guilty or it just wasn't a fair trial. But it's always difficult for parents, for children, to believe that one parent killed the other. And it doesn't matter how old they are, how well educated they are. It's difficult for them to accept that. But the evidence in his case was overwhelming, and he was in there for all of it. But I'm wondering if he saw and heard it a little bit differently than the rest of us. Let's bring in our think tank. Joining us tonight live in studio, criminal defense attorney, entertainment attorney, former prosecutor Daryl Cohen. Also with us, criminal defense attorney Meg Strickler. And finally, the man behind the glasses, criminal defense attorney Josh Schiffer. Great to see everyone.
Good to be here. Thank you.
Having us. Are you surprised by the way I mean, we all watched this trial. We all heard the evidence. I mean, there was no evidence that anyone else did or could have committed this murder. Like, if there was evidence, we would have seen it.
There's the mystery third person article that's still out there. I know the jury thoroughly rejected that, but there's still considerations.
If Buster wants to hire me to file this appeal, I'll happily say it isn't fair and file it for him.
I guarantee he's still got lots of funds for
Right?
it.
Look, you've got a child. There's a blender going on in his head. Mom and my brother are dead. My dad couldn't have done it. So he heard the evidence in a way that he needed to hear the evidence in his view, because he can't bring back his mom. He can't have his brother return. So he did what he thought he needed to do.
I don't agree. I don't see how. I could see during when he first got arrested, there'd be some denial and some selectively listening and these kinds of things. But like you just said, he sat through that entire trial. And some of that reality has to have sunk in by this point. It's crazy that it doesn't. And I agree with you, the trust fund, excuse me, is probably blinding him as well. Because if he had to go out and earn a living.
What trust fund? Where's his trust fund?
That's where all the money's buried.
They were plenty smart about asset planning, protection, and things like that. Sophisticated, fancy lawyer families had stuff set up before.
Heck yes.
I feel sorry for this young man because there's no way that he can come out a winner. His dad is a convicted murderer. His mom is gone. His brother is gone. He can't win. He just tries to lose a little bit less.
I'm going to agree with Darryl. No, I'm going to agree with Darryl. I feel bad for the kid because clearly his life has been completely ruined due to something that he didn't have any
nothing to do with.
He had nothing to do with this, but I think he was part of an entire family that was highly dysfunctional and did things that were not
Well, how is that his
moral.
fault?
Yeah.
How is that his fault?
And
He's not 12.
It's not his fault, but also I think it's interesting. He's not saying dad's innocent, dad didn't do it, because it's disrespectful to the memory of his mom.
Right.
And I don't care how
what else
bad
he's
that-
saying
yeah.
in this interview.
Yes.
We'll put it up on the screen. When asked if the term psychopath accurately describes his father, he responded, Buster Murdaugh, I'm not prepared to sit here and say that it encompasses him as a whole, but certainly I think there are characteristics where you look at the manipulation and the lies and the carrying out of that such, and I think that is a fair assessment. I do not think he could be affiliated with endangering my mother and brother. We have been here for a while now, and that's been my stance.
That's very much lawyer talk. What does he say? What is he saying there?
He's saying, I love my dad.
I love my
The
mom.
description is there. It's accurate. I loved my mom. I loved my brother. I don't know what to say. Quite frankly, I'm surprised that he agreed to an interview. That shocks me and surprises me, and maybe it's cathartic for him to get out and be able to do that.
Well, there's two parts of Alec Murdaugh, right? So the financial crimes and the stealing and all the lying, and then the murders. So I see him sort of compartmentalizing that to saying, yeah, this is a guy who'll steal money and maybe had a drug problem, but he's not buying that he would kill Paw and Maggie.
Absolutely agree that he compartmentalizes himself to protect, and that's self-protection. I also think that what he's really getting at is how the system failed, because even though if his dad may have done some stuff, the truth never came out. And I think that his chief vector of complaint is against a system that failed him, failed his family, and the truth has never come out.
I hope when the rest of the interview comes out, there's more follow-up on why this wasn't fair.
Exactly.
I'm trying to figure it out because that's his courthouse.
It's not fair because it was a verdict that he did not want to see happen to his dad. And you have to remember, he's going to have to live with this for the rest of his life.
But the whole storyline is not just the murders. I'm not saying that's not horribly, debilitating to lose your sibling and your mother. But what I'm saying is this was a lot of things happening prior to that. And you can't turn a blind eye to that.
And following up on that, and I know where you're from, Vinny, the kids of some of these crime organizations, and bluntly, if you believe all the allegations against Alec Murdaugh, he was running a fraud-based law firm that robbed people left, right, and center.
Yeah, it was not the whole firm, though.
Not the whole firm.
It was
No,
him.
not the whole firm.
Because he was stealing money from the firm itself.
So he was Teflon Alec for a while.
Well, Teflon Alec, I hate to say, I don't think the kids are that dumb. Kids pick up on stuff at home all the time.
You think that they knew that he was
They smelled a rat. They knew something wasn't right. It doesn't get to that level of fraud and not everyone else not knowing what's
Absolutely does. It's
his
my dad.
law partners didn't know. His own law partners didn't know.
I'm going to tell you, as a law partner and a former law partner, every lawyer in America is grumbling at you right now, Vinny. You know what your partners are doing in small.
That's not true.
You know what your partners are doing from the 10,000-foot view. You should know what
You should.
Yeah,
know.
You should, but you inherently trust them. Why would you not trust
But if you're a business
Murdaugh?
owner, you pay attention to the books. Are you kidding me?
Yeah, how
No.
ridiculous is the cross-examination of, so
But
where did the mystery money with no corroboration come from and where did it go?
As long
Are
as
you
it's
kidding
reported,
me?
I don't care. Say the partners.
But during the course of the trial, when the issue about the money first reared its head to the bookkeeper, and then she called in one of the other partners, then things accelerated.
Yeah,
Things accelerated. That's when they, oh my
Right?
goodness, that's when they realized what was happening.
when you put a hole in the bottom of the boat, all the rats run. Come on now.
That analogy.
And those
That's
guys go,
true.
oh my
But
Lord.
these guys were lending him money on good faith and then not
But see,
getting
that
paid
should
back.
have been a smelly thing as well.
Yeah, you ever do
They
business with
trusted
a crook?
him.
He was my partner. I've known him forever.
They're like family.
He's hurting. He's hurting.
No, this
Oh,
guy
absolutely.
pulled. I'm sorry, about to say a curse word. This guy pulled stuff
This is going to get us
beforehand.
muted.
Yeah.
Yes.
Standards and practices, go get them. But I'm telling you, there's no way that somebody else didn't smell the smell.
Thank you.
No,
No
I
way.
disagree.
So you think the
didn't
law
want to.
partners know?
I don't-
You think the family knew?
They didn't want to. You don't want to know. You close your eyes.
Wow.
You close your ears.
All right, let's go to the new information. New developments in the Stephen Smith murder investigations were released a day ago from Vinny. Vinny, let's do it, Vinny. What you got?
On July 8th, 2015, 19-year-old Stephen Smith was found dead in the middle of a lightly traveled country road in South Carolina. The investigation revealed no answers as to what happened and who was responsible. It was an extremely tragic loss for his family, but it was a case that drew very little attention until the world found out about Alec Murdaugh and his family. Then, all of a sudden, it became one of the stories linked to the Murdaughs and linked to the nation's obsession with justice or lack of justice in the low country of South Carolina. The investigation into his death is one that has raised many more questions than it has answered. The case remains unsolved, but it's worse than that. It's not even clear how he died. Was he struck by a car? If so, was it an accident or was it done on purpose? Or was he bludgeoned to death and left dead in the road? Whatever happened to Stephen, one thing is clear. It was a crime, and no one has been held responsible. Tonight, Stephen's mother, Sandra, joins us along with her attorney, Eric Bland, who is helping the family to get justice. Also with us this hour, the journalist and podcaster who broke the Murdaugh story wide open, Mandy Matney. All this as we continue our investigation into the death of Stephen Smith.
I'm Vinny Politan. Thank you so much for joining us tonight here on Closing Arguments. Big hour ahead. This is a story we spent a lot of time on earlier this year. It's time to catch up and figure out what's going on. And there's a big announcement related to Stephen Smith that we have for you tonight as well. But let's begin with Stephen Smith. I mean, it's been since 2015. That's a long time ago. That's a long, long time ago. Cold case. Not necessarily a cold case, maybe a case that wasn't getting the attention that it
I
needed.
think that's crazy is there's just so many leads and so many coincidences in this case that it's like you can't put the puzzle pieces together. That's what's very frustrating about it. That's what's been very frustrating about this case.
And the
2015.
attention that it warranted, and now it is.
Poor guy.
So hopefully that's going to get us somewhere. But it happened back in 2015 and was like, as I said, way under the radar. I mean, it wasn't on our radar here at Court TV. Then all of a sudden, the Murdaugh docuseries is on Netflix and everybody in the world is watching. And it's like, well, wait a minute. Wait a minute. What about the death of this young man? Is anything being done there? So after watching the Netflix, I think a lot of people were saying, come on, we need to figure out what happened here. Whether there is or is not a connection to anyone in the Murdaugh family. But you watch the Netflix series and it raises a lot of questions like, okay, it sounds like something that should absolutely be able to be solved. It seems like people would know and there should be some forensic evidence and You look at all the circumstances surrounding it. And then when we took a closer look at it, it was like the way the investigation sort of ping-ponged between two different departments and agencies, and then the ball was just dropped, like literally dropped. But hopefully we're in a different space now, and a lot of this, we've seen the momentum in the case. And again, it all began when people became very aware of it through the Netflix series, then shows like ours and others, podcasts were zeroing in.
The Karen Reed case is mind-blowing, like mind-bending. I'm telling you. If you're just in here and you haven't watched any of those lives, go back and watch all my Karen Reed. I think I actually made a tab on my homepage for it now because it's I do. I have a tab on my homepage for the Karen Reed case. You can go over there, Karen Reed murder trial, justice for John O'Keefe, and you can watch all my previous streams about that. And I will be reaching out. I actually have tomorrow off. So I'm actually going to be reaching out to Turtle Boy tomorrow because I have my schedule for next week. So hopefully him and I can get together on something because I want to get and do a live with him. All right, let's keep playing through here.
In on all of this, and there's a spotlight, and the spotlight creates heat. And when there's heat, there's a reaction. And, you know, the South Carolina Law Enforcement Division reopens the investigation.
Hit him.
Then you've got a team put together by the family to help move things along. And there's a second autopsy, and his body is exhumed. And you've got a new autopsy, and you've got new information that you're able to gather from all of that. And the momentum was really starting to build in this case. And then the latest we heard is that there's a grand jury involved in all of this. Now, if you've got a grand jury involved, a new autopsy, you've got SLED, SLED looking at all of this, it's like, okay, we've got to be close. We've got to be close because this is not an unsolvable case by any means. I mean, we look at the stories and the murders we cover here, and some of them are a mystery, and they're a mystery because there's nothing there. Sometimes there's not even a body. And then we look at the trials that we watch here on Court TV, and you're like, wow, how did they figure that out? They figured it out because they put some focus on it, some effort, and they got to the bottom of what happened. And that's what needs to happen here. Now, for those of you not familiar with this story, Court TV legal correspondent Chanley Painter has more information for us tonight.
Oh, real quick, I was just reading a report. If you were following my report last night and then this morning about the shooter or shooters at the Morgan State University, there's still no arrests in that case. I'm telling you, this will get swept under the carpet. Give it a couple more days and you'll hear nothing about this because it didn't fit the narrative. And when we talked about that this morning when I did my live, that little line that the news organization threw in there, because they were so looking to spin a narrative, to spin a web and spin a yarn. And I'm telling you, this will totally get swept under the carpet. It's going to get swept under the carpet. All right, let's keep playing here. Vinny!
Hampton County 911, where's your emergency?
Yeah, I just going down Parkerville Road. I see somebody laying out.
July 8th, 2015. The body of 19-year-old Stephen Smith is found during the early morning hours, lying in the middle of a rural Hampton County 2-lane road.
I ain't moving or nothing like that, but somebody gonna hit him.
Stephen was a graduate of Wade Hampton High School and was studying to be a nurse. He also was openly gay in a community where that wasn't very common.
I thought that from the beginning, that it was done out of hate.
It was not immediately clear to investigators what caused Stephen's death.
There is no body trauma other than to the head area.
He had a dislocated right shoulder, and then his eye socket was broke. The whole back of his head was crushed.
There is some scrapes and scratches on his left and right arm, on his knuckles, some across his.
See, and that's the thing is I want to just kind of do a parallel here. Same injuries to John O'Keefe and Karen Reed case. And I've talked about this. This is why I don't think that Karen Reed backed up over him or hit him with a car. Why no lower body injuries on John O'Keefe? Why no lower body injuries on Stephen Smith? All the injuries to both victims in this cases, right to the head, skull injuries, facial injuries. That tells me that something or someone hit both these victims in their face, in their head. Wasn't with vehicles. Yeah, this potentially could be a situation where someone was driving and maybe they had a baseball bat and stuck that out, out of the car window or whatever and hit them. And now that you start kind of, and I'm glad that this got brought up in this, because I actually thought about this morning when I was reviewing it, and I'm thankfully that this is coming back to me now. Both cases, like Miss Krampus is saying, they're both blunt force trauma to the head. All these injuries in both cases, Karen Reed, John O'Keefe, Stephen Smith, all blunt force trauma to the head. What does that tell you? What does that tell you? Someone intentionally hit both these victims. Someone intentionally hit both these victims. All right, let's keep playing through here.
Face.
Later that morning, police found Stephen Smith's car about 3 miles away, parked on the side of the road.
The car was locked. He had his phone and his key in his pocket, but then he left his wallet. So if you're going to go get gas, why would you leave your wallet in the car?
The medical examiner ruled Stephen's death the result of a hit and run, a finding that shocked his mother and the
I wonder if Stephen was lured there. Someone lured him there. Is that the right word? Lured him there. Maybe potential fake date or something like that. Maybe there was no digital evidence of it. I mean, I don't know. It's very strange. Maybe there was a conversation and they knew that he was going to be there and they showed up and beat him up, or drove by and didn't hit him with a car, but hit him with something coming out of the car. So it's really interesting.
Investigators.
There was no damage anywhere. There was no debris in the road.
Does not appear to be, in my opinion, struck by a vehicle.
As police tried to determine exactly what had happened, Buster Murdaugh's name kept coming up.
Some of his friends came over, him and Stephanie's friends, and they said, it was the Murdaugh boys that did this. We never thought that. But then it just kept coming over and over and over again.
Investigators never figured out how the rumors began, and Buster Murdaugh strongly denied any involvement, calling them baseless, and said his heart went out to Stephen's family. The investigation into Stephen's death stalled for 6 years, until June of 2021, when the murders of Maggie and Paul Murdaugh thrust the case into the national spotlight. It was then that SLED reopened the investigation and officially ruled Stephen Smith's death a homicide.
Okay, we've got some special guests joining us tonight from Hilton Head Island in South Carolina. Stephen Smith's mother, Sandy Smith, and with her, the author of the soon-to-be-released book, Blood on Their Hands, Murder, Corruption, and the Fall of the Murdaugh Dynasty. And if this book is anything like the podcast, it's going to be amazing. And of course, she's also the creator of the Murdaugh Murder podcast and another podcast, which everyone's listening to, Cup of Justice. Mandy Matney is with us. And in Columbia, South Carolina, tonight, the attorney for Stephen Smith's family. He's also the host of that Cup of Justice podcast with Mandy. Eric Bland is with us. Okay, I am so glad everyone is here tonight. Thank you so much. Sandy, I want to begin with you. And I want to right off the top here, because I know there's a big announcement about...
Oh, here we go. It's officially now classified as a homicide.
A scholarship that you are now going to be putting together. Can you explain to us what it is and how it came to be?
It came to be through the generous people who donated to the GoFundMe. And we were able to put aside the $30,000 for the reward. And then we put $25,000 in a scholarship fund with the community foundations of the Low Country. And It is to help young people who want to go to college but doesn't really have the means, and they struggled like Stephen struggled. And Stephen struggled mainly with the workbooks and the scrubs because they were like $300 and $300, but you had to buy them from the school. There was no other way of getting it, and it was hard. And I feel like that's what Stephen would want us to do, is to help others.
Hello,
what
Harlan.
an amazing thought. What an amazing generosity. Let me put it up on the screen here so folks can see it. It's the Stephen Nicholas Smith Memorial Scholarship, established, obviously, in loving memory of Stephen Nicholas Smith by his family and friends. The mission, again, is to provide annual scholarship support for qualified students with financial need who are in pursuit of post-secondary education with a preference for the field of nursing. Eric Bland, I'll go to you really quickly. You know, the money, right? There's such generosity and an outpouring of support. And there was some money, and amazingly, now that's going to be used to help young people like Stephen.
Yes. First, I'd like to say good evening, Vinny, and thank you so much for doing this story. The only way that we can make progress is if we have a focus on Stephen's investigation and Stephen's death. And you doing this is very important. I also like to say hello to Mandy and Sandy, two of the most beautiful women in my life, who I value so much. Yes, I mean, it is amazing what Sandy has done. She has not taken one single penny from any of the money that has been raised through GoFundMe and any other charitable donations. There hasn't been any attorney's fees. All the money has gone to pay experts, to pay for the exhumation, to pay for the reinterment of Stephen, the second autopsy report. This wasn't designed to enrich Sandy. This was to start the fire. And you know what happens with cold cases, Vinny, there's a lot of flurry in the beginning, and then they tend to, you know, the investigation tends to wane a little bit. And what happens here now is Alex, with his new plea and the new shenanigans by his lawyers daily and appeals and the Corey Fleming, it's stealing the oxygen away from Stephen's investigation. And quite frankly, I'm a little frustrated with SLED. I am beginning to voice that frustration because I think we're entitled to know more than just we're making progress. I'm not asking for the granular details, but Sandy Smith has been patient. She's been backburnered so many different times over the last 6-7 years, and now she's being backburnered again, it looks like, with what what's going on with Alex, both in state and federal court.
Mandy, great to see you. Let's talk about your thoughts and your perspective on Stephen's case and what has happened to Stephen Smith and how it related to Murdaugh and where we are now.
Yeah, so I met Sandy actually in 2019 when I was investigating the boat crash that killed Mallory Beach. I had seen a bunch of memes on Facebook and heard a lot of chatter, people saying they want justice for Stephen and Mallory. And I knew nothing at that point, and the first question was, well, who's Stephen? And a couple days later, I was at Sandy's door, and I met her in 2019. I was thinking about that today and how far we've come in the last few years, but how far we still have to go. And I've gotten to know Sandy very well in the last few years. We've become very close, and I've, as a journalist and now as her friend too, I just have seen the ups and downs that she has to go through. And I've seen her get so excited, and I remember you called me the day that the investigation was reopened, and we both cried because that's all that she wanted. She just wanted that validation. And then again, she got some more validation when SLED called this a murder and said that they were focusing on it back in March. And now here we are again and just needing answers. And I'm with you, Vinny. This case absolutely can be solved. That was one of the first things that I noticed when I started investigating this back in 2019, is that there's a lot there. They just need people to open up. There are people, I believe, who are keeping secrets on behalf of who knows. We do not know who killed Stephen, and we are not saying that the Murdaughs did it by any means. And Sandy is not saying that either. We are just saying that we need answers and we need people to talk. And to do that, this is what we need to be doing. We need to be putting Stephen in the spotlight again. So thank you again for having us. We really appreciate it.
So Mandy, in your investigation, and I've looked at it as well, and I've got my take. Why do you think that, a case going back to 2015, here we are in 2023, and we still don't have an answer? Sandy doesn't have justice. Why do you think that is?
I think, unfortunately, a lot of people, I think people know what happened, and I think that they chose themselves and to protect other people instead of worrying about a grieving mother and caring about Sandy Smith and her family, and actually stopping to think about what it does to them every single night and every single day, knowing that their son was killed and they have no answers. I think that there's a lot of selfish people out there who do know what happened, and I think that they have believed all this time that this is just going to go away, that Stephen's story is going to die down and they can sweep it under the rug. But this is another example. This is just another chapter. We're all going to keep going. There's so many people who love Sandy, as it's very evident from the $130,000 raised very quickly. People love Stephen so much, and people really, really want his case to be solved. No matter who did it, we just need answers.
Absolutely. Okay, Mandy and Sandy will stay with us. Eric Bland will stay with us. When we come back, we're going to take you back to the scene to get a little more insight into what happened that day. Plus, coming up next hour.
In Chaffee County,
continue to
zip ahead.
In Hampton County, where Stephen Smith's body was found in 2015. There's now a memorial to honor his memory at this location. This is an area that is remote. There's a cornfield on one side of the highway. There's trees on this side of the highway. And here you can see it's only about 20 yards from the nearest home.
What did that home see? What did that home hear?
Memorial to honor his memory at this location. This is an area that is remote. There's a cornfield on one side of the highway. There's trees on this side of the highway. And here you can see it's only about 20.
Right there. I'd be walking over and talking to those people in that house. What'd you hear? What'd you see? Did you hear or see anything?
Yards from the nearest
I know it was super early in the morning, but still.
home.
Chanley Painter returned to the scene when we were all down
Glad
there
you're talking to you
covering the
first.
Murdaugh trial and covering the story as well. She went back another time with the star of the Murdaugh trial, the expert witness, Kenny Kinsey, who after this interview became part of the team looking at the death of Stephen Smith. Let's take a look at what Chanley and Ken Kinsey had to say.
I'm here on Sandy Run Road in rural Hampton, South Carolina, the location where 19-year-old Stephen Smith's body was found in the early morning hours of July 8th, 2015. We are digging into the investigation file, and in that effort, we wanted to tap into some expert resources. So I had Dr. Kenny Kinsey meet me here at this location. He, of course, is an expert in crime scene reconstruction, and I can't wait, Dr. Kinsey, to hear your thoughts. I know that you've also read the file. Now that we're here on location, what's standing out to you?
Ms. Chanley, I noticed some features in the landscape that have remained constant in the last 7 or 8 years. A lot has changed. The dynamics of the highway, the pavement, some of the paint, but I can also isolate several features that helps me put the location down to a pinpoint. Maybe not a point of origin, but at least an area of origin where Mr. Smith's body was located.
And that's key to kind of understand maybe what happened, how his body was positioned at the time that those first responders arrived here at the scene, right?
It is. See that one point right here? Right. And then the box extends over the actual line. So head this direction, feet that direction.
Feet that direction.
Yes, ma'am.
Right here, literally on the center line, it looks like.
Yeah, he did straddle the center line. I don't know the exact position because I haven't seen the exact photos, but somewhere in this area.
What does the position here in the middle on the center line tell you?
Well, Ms. Chanley, it's so many different ways, and I don't want to. I don't want to state a method because I really don't know.
This guy's so polite. He keeps calling her by her last name.
That part. It does look a little odd to me, the lack of damage to Mr. Smith's clothing. I mean, I'm not a trooper. I haven't ever been a trooper, but I have assisted on a number of pedestrian versus vehicle accidents. And I don't know that I've ever seen clothing in that pristine a condition from a vehicle versus pedestrian accident. And the positioning on the middle line, I mean, at bare minimum, I don't think a person could mistakenly hit someone and not know they hit someone.
There is a lot of, you can see kind of far down in this direction, that there's a slight curve here in the road. Does that indicate anything or would affect anything?
There is, but in the original photographs and right now, they keep the shoulder cut back. So you still got plenty of field of view. You may not get it in the highway, you know, from a distance, but you should still see something moving. And those headlights are going to light it up for several hundred feet.
The lack of physical evidence here at the scene, talk to me about that.
Well, typically, Ms. Chanley, you're going to have car parts, plastic, glass, you know, those lenses, they don't hold up to a lot of impact. And the ones that I have worked that were intentional, and also the ones I've assisted highway patrol with, I believe there's always been debris.
Right.
That's what they think.
To the point,
You would see something, this is not obviously from a car, but just maybe the bumper or paint.
Oh, exactly.
There's no evidence really of swerving, right, from what you see in those photos?
In none of the photos I've seen, Chanley, when you slam on brakes, you're going to leave tire material on the pavement. It's going to show definitely the tire span, the width of that vehicle. Sometimes if you stop fast enough, it's going to leave a direct impression in that rubber. If you can find that at a crime scene and you can find a suspect tire, a lot of times you can use those characteristics to include or exclude that tire.
None of that's here on the scene.
And it's probably changed in 8 years. If that vehicle is still around, of course, we change our shoes. Well, you have to change your car tires too. So it may be knowledge, some person's knowledge that they have to depend on. The key here is someone knows. Someone knows, because people can't be quiet, and somebody knows and they're scared to come forward for whatever reason. But somebody knows, and the Smith family deserves answers.
Sandy Smith, Stephen's mom, still with us. Mandy Matney, Eric Bland as well. And Sandy, amazing folks who are helping out from the team that Eric and his partner put together. What are your thoughts about that night? I mean, would he be walking down the middle of the street? I mean, I'm not from the country, but if I was walking down that street in the middle of the night, there's not a lot of traffic, I think I would see or hear a car approaching.
Right. And Stephen and his sister and the friends, they walk the roads at night sometimes. And if a car was coming towards them, well, they would hear a car or see lights. They would jump in the woods and hide and then wait on that car to pass. And then they would get back in the road and start walking again.
That makes sense. It's the middle of the night, right? It's the early morning hours. There's no street lights there. There's not traffic. I mean, I think when I was there, I don't know if there were 3 cars that may have passed through that area. All of these roads are very, middle of the day. There you have it. Oh, there goes one car. Yeah. Wait another 20 minutes. Maybe you'll see another one. Eric,
right.
So you expressed the level of frustration, and explain to us how the team you've put together is working or communicating with SLED. How is that relationship?
Kind of sounds like a current case that we're covering there, Carrie. Small town, secrets run deep.
Working or not working?
It's more of a one-way highway, but that's come to be expected. The pathologist did his second autopsy report. It was given to SLED. Dr. Michelle Dupree did a report. It was given to SLED. Dr. Kenny Kenzie did a report. It was given to SLED. And they asked us not to release it publicly because it would interfere with their investigation. And, again, we were very excited and excited to cooperate with their requests. And we still are. The frustration for me is this cone of silence that is existing about Stephen's death. Not sure who did it. I don't really get mired down in that, but I know that people know how he died. And justice for Sandy looks a little bit like this. She doesn't want to tar and feather anybody, put anybody on a post and burn them at the stake. She just wants to get answers on how her son died. She needs peace. A mother that has to live not knowing how her son died never gets a good fresh breath of air or a good night's sleep. So she wants answers. Then the second component of justice is holding somebody properly accountable. If it's somebody that hit Stephen and then fled the scene, then it's fleeing the scene of an accident. If it's somebody that intentionally tried to scare Stephen and it got out of control, well, then we'll have to hear the story. But mainly, number one, is I'm trying to get answers for this woman so that she can go.
Welcome in, everybody. We have about 91 people in here right now. If you could do me a huge favor when you come in, smash that like button. We're trying to reach our goal of 100 likes. Each stream, 100 likes.
On with her life and not be haunted by the memory of Stephen's death. She deserves that. Every mother deserves that. And I feel like it's SLED.
Thank you. Yeah, he wrote back to me again. He essentially just said, hey, let's try to get something going for next week. I just got to look at my schedule tomorrow, see what my schedule is for next week, and hopefully him can line up. It's going to happen. It's just him and I need to get on a day that we both can do it. So, yeah, it'll be nuts. The Boston accents will be flying. All right.
Again, they're doing what they're doing. I don't get the inside 411 on what's going on. But every time we have a Murdaugh fire drill, whether it's this new jury issue or it's Alex pleading guilty in federal court or whatever, the oxygen just goes. And it goes right to Alex. And that's the pernicious effect that this miscreant has had on our state.
Mandy, going back to the scene where this happened and this road, and to me, accidents can happen, I guess. It just seems like someone driving down the road would see him if he happened to stay in the road. If he's in the road, like Sandy said, you hear or see a car, regardless of how fast it is. You look at where he was found and you look how long the stretch of road is, and how quiet it is there, and how peaceful, especially in the early morning hours. Does any of this, what makes sense to you as to what could have happened here?
Well, I think one big thing that has always stuck out to me is Stephen's wounds. And Stephen was most of his trauma was on his head. And if you think
kind of sounds like a current case that we're following.
Think about that. How could a car, and they hypothesized that a truck mirror could do that. And he had abrasions, a little bit of abrasions on his arms, but most of
kind of sounds like a current case that we're following.
The damage to his body was on the front of his face, correct? The front of his head.
The whole, all this was crushed.
Right, his head was crushed. But if you stop and think about that, how could a vehicle hit somebody primarily in the head and, like Dr. Kinsey said, pretty much leave their clothes untouched it seems almost impossible. And you combine that with just so many weird things that happened in the investigation, and you combine that with the lack of evidence of a vehicular homicide on the scene, and you comb through those reports and look for anybody in the highway patrol who believes that that this was a vehicle accident, and no, none of them did.
No.
They all said, I found no evidence of a vehicular homicide here. So I don't understand for the life of me how this case was in the Highway Patrol's hands for as long as it was, because it should not have been the Highway Patrol's case. It should have been Sled's case in 2015.
Yes.
Sandy, how do you think he got where he was found from his car that we're looking at here? Because they're about 3 miles in separation, right? The car's about 3 miles away from where he was found. How do you think he got there?
I'm thinking someone placed him there because the reason being, he had his cell phone. It wasn't far from the house. He would have called Stephanie to come and get him or bring him gas. Because he has run out of gas before, and the first thing he does is call his sister. And she always come and picked him up. So I don't see him walking that far.
Yeah, he has a cell phone. That's the great thing about, getting stuck on the road these days. Everyone has a cell phone. You make the call. It's very simple. All right, Sandy, Mandy, Eric Bland, stay where you are. When we come back, we're going to take a listen to some of those police interviews that were done early on. On a scale of 0 to 10, 10 being like very, very illuminating, 0 being doesn't tell you anything.
That's horrible to have to watch like your son's body being exhumed. That's horrible, right? This poor mother. It's horrible. Then they have to go through that process of doing another autopsy, after her son's body's been in the ground for, how many years is that? 2015 to 2023. Almost 8 years. Ugh. It's terrible.
How much did this second autopsy tell you about what
How are
happened
you?
to Stephen Smith?
Good to see you. Yeah.
Actually, Vinny, I
Welcome
think it
in.
was close to a 10.
Really?
Really. We were able to do everything we needed to do. And again, it was almost as if we were doing the first autopsy. The only
See if
thing
we
that
can
we
break
did not
100.
do was
We got 99 in
toxicology.
here. Smash
And we
that
have the
like button
results
as you
from
come
the
in,
first
please.
autopsy on that. So they weren't needed. But we did
Hanging at
everything else that
99
you would
peeps.
expect
Let's
in
get
a regular
100 peeps
autopsy.
tonight.
We were able to, again, get the
Nope,
information that we
lost 2.
needed. And really, this is now, this is sort of now in the hands of the investigators. That's where a lot of this key information is going to lie. We're hoping that somebody who does know something, because somebody does, will come forward and sort of fill in a few of the missing pieces that we don't have.
That was back in April, right here on Closing Arguments, Dr. Michelle Dupree, a 10 out of 10 in how illuminating the second autopsy was, which was great news, right? And then again, it was, as Eric Bland has told us, handed it off to SLED. And here we are now, it's September, still waiting to find out more about what's going on. What is the grand jury? What type of evidence are they hearing? What are they doing? Now, at the time, you go back to 2015, there were a series of interviews that were done with people. And we have audio recordings of those interviews. And everyone says, well, how did the Murdaughs even come up in this? Well, they came up in this because of what people were saying to investigators. Take a listen.
Can you tell me what you heard about the Stephen Smith incident?
I just heard when I last week that it goes over.
You heard what? I'm sorry?
When I last week that it
Okay. And who was that?
Mr. Murdaugh.
Okay. And I'll be honest with you, Tatiana. Lester Murdaugh's been on our radar long before this.
I was with some friends one night, and out of the blue, one of my friends came here and said that, we had already knew, like, he got hit or whatever, and we didn't know who did it, but we just heard that Buster did it. So after that, I
another friend of mine had texted me asking me if Buster and Stephen were together, and I told him no. I said, not that I knew of, and then I asked him why. He said because he had heard that, and then I asked him who he heard it from, and he said he didn't know, he just heard it.
Okay, so he didn't have any anything to base that upon, just except for more or less a rumor. Is that correct?
Yes, sir.
And that's how, everyone was talking about Buster Murdaugh in particular, but how the Murdaugh name got intertwined in the death of Stephen Smith. Let's bring back in our guest, Stephen's mom, Sandy Smith, Mandy Matney, author of the new book, Blood on Their Hands, and Eric Bland, the attorney representing Sandy Smith's family. So, Sandy, what do you make of low country rumors? Do you take them with a big grain of salt? What do you think?
Well, I do take it with a grain of salt. And when they first told Stephanie, it upset Stephanie when they said that Buster killed your brother. And she came to me crying, and I said, Stephanie, you got to overlook what people say. People's going to talk, especially because of your brother's lifestyle. I said, so I don't see any reason why they would have any reason for killing Stephen.
And Mandy, you talk about, and everyone keeps saying it, right? Dr. Kenny Kinsey, Dr. Michelle Dupree, talking about the fact that someone's got to say something. Well, initially people were saying something. There were these rumors. I mean, you try to trace a rumor. It could be just one person started it, and then it just spread like wildfire from there, just out of thin air. But the irony is that the rumors are what sort of put the Murdaugh family and Buster in the middle of all this, yet no one has come forward with the information that investigators need to make an arrest here.
Right, and I think
Who's going to go? Mandy first, then Eric will close us out.
The heck's going on?
I think we lost Mandy's microphone.
Vinny's like, what's going on?
We don't hear. So Eric, you take over for a second.
No, I think he has a girlfriend.
We don't know that. We don't know if anyone hasn't talked yet. We haven't heard from SLED. We obviously are not going to hear from the grand jury because it's a secret proceeding. Look, do I believe Buster Murdaugh killed Stephen Smith? The answer is I have no idea. I think it would be patently unfair to put that blame on that young man at this time. Now, there was one question that wasn't asked of him in the Fox Nation documentary, and they asked him, did you have a relationship with Stephen Smith? No. Did you kill Stephen Smith? No. The follow-up question, which would have been the first question we want an answer to, is, do you know what happened to Stephen Smith? And that wasn't asked, Vinny. And we do believe that Buster has some knowledge. And amongst some of his friends, there's at least 5 or 6 people who are persons of interest, not necessarily because they were involved in Stephen's death, but they have knowledge of what happened to him. And that's the cone of silence that we talked about. And, the Murdaugh cone of silence is very scary in that part of the state. In the documentary, you heard that Alex's wife, Maggie, told Paul's girlfriend, look, this is the kind of family you're getting into. When Randolph's wife, Miss Libby, was going to leave him, he posted an obituary of her in one of the Low Country papers. Now, that is frightening.
Wow, that is cold.
And she didn't leave him. That is frightening. And that tells you the kind of people that these Murdaughs are, and that they wield a lot of power. So I don't necessarily agree with Mandy in part that they're just being selfish and not stating it. I think there's some people that are legitimately afraid if they open their mouth, and it's the duty of SLED to protect these people.
So, Mandy, where do you think we are right now in terms of what the temperature is down there, right? The Murdaugh dynasty has blown up, right? We witnessed it ourselves. Go ahead.
All right. Well, Eric, I just want to say, I understand, and I don't want to say that people are being selfish, but times have changed in the Low Country, and I live in the Low Country, and I was terrified in 2019 when I started investigating this case and others associated with the Murdaugh family. And back then was a different ballgame that we were talking about when we were trying to talk about the Murdaugh family. Now, times are different. Alec Murdaugh was convicted of murder in a fair trial that I believe was fair, but that's another situation.
That's another episode.
That's another episode. But
yeah.
I don't think that that's an excuse anymore to be scared. Look at this woman. Look how much pain she's been in. Like, it's time for people to stop being scared and start thinking about other people's feelings. There's no excuses anymore. And I believe that SLED can get this job done as long as people cooperate and step up and they end this cone of silence. And we're done of the days of having excuses for people being silent anymore. I don't think that they should be afraid. I think that they should just do what is right and come forward. And go ahead.
Okay.
Amen.
Amen. That's right. Well stated. Sandy Smith, thank you so much for joining us tonight.
Thank you for having me.
Amazing work with that scholarship. Good luck with that. We're so glad we were able to announce that tonight. Manny Matney, November 14th, the book is coming out?
It is.
Where are people find it?
November 14th.
You can find it everywhere, right?
They can pre-order on Amazon and bloodontheirhandsbook.com.
Awesome. Awesome. And Eric Bland, what you've done down there, and I want to remind folks, you're taking no fees for this work that you're doing, which is like the opposite of Alec Murdaugh, right? So like Alec Murdaugh takes your money, doesn't do anything for you. And then Eric Bland doesn't take any money and does everything for you. So we appreciate your time as well. Thank you, everyone.
I appreciate that.
All right. Have a great night, everyone.
Thank you.
All right. That's it. That's going to conclude this broadcast day. I'm exhausted. I'm going right here. I'll show you where I'm going. I am going right there in about 5 minutes. Oh, I'm so tired. These last 3 nights have been a lot. My new job, I am running around constantly a lot. So it's tiring. But one good thing is it makes the days go by quick, and I'm going to have an opportunity to look at my schedule for next week, and hopefully I get some day shifts, because these long mid shifts are kind of like, I mean, I don't mind doing them once in a while, but I'm not going to be doing those all the time. These like 11 to 8s and 11 to 9s and all that stuff. Like I do have a life outside of work, so I'll let it go for a little while, and then obviously have, a conversation if I need to have that conversation. Just say, hey, look, I need to do some day shifts here. I got stuff that I need to do after work. So yeah, I think that's going to be it. Real quick stream tonight. Wanted to get in tomorrow night. Some Brian Kohberger updates. I'm going to drop the reminder for that for you all for tomorrow night. If you don't get it, if you just wait to the end of this stream, it'll connect you, but you can click on that and get the reminder. All right, everybody, short show tonight. I am super, super tired. I'm going to get off here, get some sleep. I have tomorrow off. Maybe I'll pop up and do a random afternoon stream tomorrow, maybe 12 or 1 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. Just keep an eye out. Something might spontaneously pop up. If you're around, you can pop in and watch it. If not, definitely tomorrow night, 8:15 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. I'll see you all there. Thank you, moderators, subscribers, members. Appreciate you all. And have a great night. See you tomorrow. Bye.